Friends, hello everyone. Today, residents of many Russian regions suddenly remembered what it's like to be without electricity, without heat, without water in winter, at minus 15 or even 20 degrees. But this isn't because of an accident or bad weather. All of this is targeted work. Ukraine delivered hellish strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure. On the internet, this is already being called the Madian Blackout. So what happened during the night? How did we manage to reach all the way to the northern fleet of the Russian Federation? And most importantly, can we turn off the capital, Moscow, in the same way? That's what today's episode is about. But first, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and leave your comments, friends. This is super important for the growth of our community. And so as not to waste any time, let's get started right away with these gorgeous, fresh new shots. Last night, Russian cities began plunging into darkness one after another. How did it happen? Actually, it all started in the south of Russia. At 9 o'clock p.m., a powerful strike hit the CHP in Belgorod. Not artillery, but as reported, a missile strike. And just minutes later, entire districts of the city were plunged into darkness and cold. He said directly, most likely, it was a HIMARS. A key detail, by the way, is that it's expensive, high-precision weaponry, and as you know, it's not wasted on trifles. But in reality, HIMARS strikes are always impressive. It's also possible that it was another type of weapon, maybe even drones, but honestly, it doesn't matter to us. HIMARS or drones, it doesn't matter at all. The main thing is that Belgorod is now completely without electricity, without water, and without what else? That's right, without heat. Almost at the same time, something is happening in the south as well. There are explosions on the outskirts of Taganrog. Officially, it's a transformer accident. But whether by accident or not, it's precisely in this industrial city with defense factories, mind you. The strike wasn't on the workshops, but on the power supply. In addition to this, another part of the energy infrastructure was also hit. As a result, Taganrog is also partially without electricity. Then, friends, in the east as well, far to the east, Perm, the Zakomsk district, here. There were no loud explosions, just suddenly and deliberately, the power went out specifically in the industrial zone. Why here? Because the Perm gunpowder plant is located here, one of the main suppliers of explosives for the Russian Federation's army. Then another part of the city somehow suddenly lost its electricity. Well, that's how it goes sometimes. Probably really because of the bad weather, I don't know. But in reality, the main spectacle unfolded in the far north. Murmansk and Severomorsk. Here, friends, the scale of the disaster is such that the official liars got tangled up in their own statements. On the one hand, they talk about ice that supposedly destroyed it once. 5 supports of the main power transmission lines. They say new supports are already being brought in from other regions. After all, they need to save the situation. They need to help. On the other hand, the investigative committee of the Russian Federation is opening a case about the negligence of the power engineers. The question is, how is that? How can you be negligent about ice that suddenly appears and knocks down 5 power lines? No, in this case, it's probably an external factor at play. And this, friends, is a mystery, the answer to which I will reveal a bit later. In fact, if. By the way, that's how people are behaving there now. See how they're cooking food. For us Ukrainians, all of this is very familiar. This is exactly how we are living right now. Now let the Russian degenerates get used to this way of life. Severomorsk, friends, is the main base of the Northern Fleet with nuclear submarines, in case anyone forgot. And there, too, it's darkness. And on the streets of Murmansk, there are field kitchens. You're not mistaken, just field kitchens. The same field kitchens, lines for porridge, and the chance to charge their phones. Everything they did to us in the winter. In 2022, then in 2023, not so much in 2024, but in 2025 and now in the winter of 2026. They're going through all of this, with even worse consequences for themselves. Do you understand? Now they go out into the streets and set up their own field kitchens. They have to eat because there's nowhere and no way to cook. There's no heat, no water, no electricity. There's nothing at all. And all because you got into this war. You started it. Well, now, here you go. War comes back like a boomerang, no matter how pompous that may sound. And finally, if you think that's all, no, that's not all. Because next comes a show of force right in the heart. Oriol, Bryansk regions, explosions, sirens, local blackouts. And also, friends, Zaraysk, that's already. The very heart, Moscow region, just 100 kilometers from the Kremlin. And there too, an accident on the networks. And this is no coincidence. It's a message that your dense air defense dome is not impenetrable. We're already here. We've already arrived. Good evening. We are from Ukraine. So what do we have here? We don't have chaotic strikes. We have a synchronized operation spanning thousands of kilometers. The strikes are not on buildings, but on key nodes of the energy system, on thermal power plants, main substations, and power line supports. This is a strategic move, it's expensive, and it's very effective. Although whether it's expensive or not, I won't venture to judge here. The main thing is the result, and the result is now on your screens. Total darkness, pitch black. And now, friends, the Kremlin's reaction. The Ministry of Defense says that overnight they shot down 52 Ukrainian drones over 6 regions. No one says anything about HIMARS anymore. They just stay silent. I'm curious, ask the residents of those regions. Did shooting them down help them avoid a blackout? The answer is obvious, as you can see. This was a massive, coordinated attack on the energy system of the Russian Federation. And this blackout, friends, has a name. And that's not a metaphor. The commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Magyar Brody, had already clearly warned the Russians earlier. I quote his words every time on my blog when we talk about a blackout in Russia. A blackout is not scary, wrote Magyar. It's just a bit of inconvenience. The SBS birds, together with other components of the Ukrainian armed forces' deep strike capabilities, promise you a rapid, albeit somewhat forced, adaptation. But you'll manage. Remember what Magyar wrote? Well, there you go. The logic here is simple. Look, if Russia causes blackouts in Ukraine, we'll show you what that looks like in your own homes. This is a mirrored and fair response. The Russians, perhaps, didn't quite believe it. Well, it happens. They didn't believe it. So here you go. Ticket, promise kept. And this is just the beginning. That's what I want to say. This is only the beginning. And so, friends, the main question arises, can we also turn off Moscow? We've already reached within 100 kilometers of the Kremlin, right? Expert Konstantin Krivolapov, my frequent interviewee and aviation specialist, provides clear answers. Technical capabilities. They exist for this. That's the first thing. It is possible to drive Moscow into such a situation. The unified energy system of Russia consists of 7 large macro-regional energy systems with a center in the Moscow region. Look, the thing is this region receives 80% of its electricity from 3 thermal power plants, while nuclear generation provides the remaining 20%. The key element of the system is the Moscow energy ring. It consists of 10 substations connected by 500 kilovolt lines. These substations are located around the perimeter. They receive electricity from main transmission lines and distribute it throughout the city. To target. If a strike is carried out on strategic facilities of significant importance, for example, transformer stations located on the outskirts rather than in the Moscow region, the consequences could be much more serious. This will lead to a sense of war not only in Russian regions, but also among the military, because they too, well, not only rely on generators, but also receive electricity from the general power grid. But this won't be easy. Let's also talk about that. Honestly, why? Because in Moscow's anti-Putin defense, there are complexes standing guard. S-400, S-500, Pantsers, Tors, they've deployed them there, crude mobile units, they've concentrated them, and so on. And to effectively strike the energy infrastructure of the Russian capital, these systems need to be blinded, the systems that detect missiles and drones. And without radars, Ukrainian weapons will probably reach their targets. 40% of all Russian air defense is concentrated in Moscow and the Moscow region. 40% is a dense shield, but not an impenetrable one. Currently, only about 20% of our attacks reach their targets in this region. It's a high price to pay, but think about what comes next. What is needed for success? First, combined attacks, friends. The use of different types of drones and missiles simultaneously to overload the air defense. It's not me saying this, it's what the experts say, just to be clear. Greater quantity and range. In other words, we need weapons that can reach deeper. By the way, maybe flamingos? I'll make a separate blog about flamingos because there are the results of the strikes, friends, that we received today, and that'll be in the next blog. Next, a political decision is needed. The question of when and how to carry out such strikes is a tactical matter, but most importantly, to completely paralyze Russia. It's enough to hit 7 key electrical substations, which I mentioned earlier. And what if we hit 15? Well, then what happens? Blackout, guaranteed. And this isn't science fiction, it's simply an engineering calculation. So look, Magyar's blackout is a fact. Ukraine is demonstrating the ability to deliver massive, precise strikes on Russia's energy sectors simultaneously over long distances. The Russian authorities are lying to their people, blaming everything on the weather, negligence in the energy sector, and so on. But people see everything. They see the real reason in the dark windows of their own damn apartments. Resources, tactics, time. It's not easy. The dome over Moscow is indeed dense, but it is not impenetrable. Every such attack, especially at night, is not just damage to infrastructure, it's a test of their air defense's strength. Don't forget, it's the cost of their expensive missiles, it's demoralization. The logic of war is changing. The war has come to the aggressor's rear. And now Russia has to choose either continue to terrorize peaceful Ukrainian cities and receive a mirrored response in its own Ural system, or look for advantages. When will we reach Moscow, friends? Well, we're already there. In fact, every explosion at their substation, every darkened district is our message. A message that there will be no impunity, that every strike on a Ukrainian heating line or electrical substation or nuclear power plant, God forbid, all of this will have its precise technological address in Russia. This night was only their first moderate warning. So, adapt. That's my message to the Russians. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it. Please subscribe more actively. Take care of yourselves, and see you next time.